There is a shift that is going on right now within the media, within the printed word, within television, and also within the internet. And this model that I'm going to present to you here is actually put forth by the Media Center, which is a think tank based out of Washington, D.C. And I just want to take a couple of minutes and explain what you're seeing here. The vertical axis has to do with audience vision, and the horizontal axis has to do with traditional products, documentaries, paper products, publications, and moving them out toward a more viable future, which is ill-defined at this point. If you take a look at this as their model, they obviously have some bias here, but audience vision would demand a more open form of media. At the top of the vertical axis, and at the bottom of the vertical axis is more closed media. If you look more over to the left-hand side, it's more incremental, begins as more incremental, and certainly if you're looking at on a time sequence from the industrial era to now, you are in more incremental change, and then as you move forward, you have to embrace more of innovation. So let me talk about the lower left-hand quadrant, which is about retaining what we know. In this lower left-hand quadrant, which is where most of us live today, we are involved with incrementally defending and extending existing markets. That may be disciplines, that may be the way we understand the way things are done. If we take a look at the lower right-hand quadrant, we're looking at reimagining how things might change. What if we could wipe the slate clean? What if we could rewrite some of these things and look at it in a different way? Here, networks really come into play as an organizational structure. Networks have to emerge because that's how people get together. They're absorbing this new knowledge in trust-based relationships. It's the only way that that can actually take place. So usually it's underground, it's opaque, it's happening in isolated little pockets, and then it eventually gets discovered later on. So innovation, which is kind of what we're in right now, with a lot of innovation going on, you've got, when you look at the shift in media between traditional media forms as well as bloggers or journalists who are in traditional organizations but have their own blog, there's a house divided amongst itself, and there's a lot of issues where people are trying to resolve this. But when this happens, when you have innovation, as in any industrial shift, it will be co-opted. It will be co-opted by the existing organizations as they change. A re-aggregation, a remixing occurs, and so either co-option is going to occur or co-creation. Typically what happens is you go from the lower right-hand corner where people are having to have a high amount of trust to be able to collaborate with each other to where that trust gets co-opted and there's betrayal and there's a lot of cynicism that is created in this upper left-hand quadrant. The upper right-hand quadrant, which is remediate, is something that's really not very well understood. It's looking at a media-centric audience, which is clearly, we have some aspects of that here today in an informed digital society. Sounds nice, sounds Pollyannic. Who knows if that's really what's going to happen? This matrix really describes, and not necessarily an evolutionary thrust, although I think there's parts of it that we experience even now today. But really, it's a template for discussion among people in the media and also with the courts, trying to understand where does media fit? How do we work with people and how do we educate them? How do we educate the general public? How do we educate ourselves in the middle of this shift? So now let me stop. We've come through 5 of those discussions. We've looked at the moral authority brought forth by Alex de Tocqueville. We've looked at It's a Small, Flat World being presented by Tom Friedman. No, it's not. It's a small, opaque world, which is the flip side of that. Are we becoming, perhaps nothing has changed and we've gone really from the public square to Hollywood squares. It's become more infotainment, which is what Foucault would argue. Or finally, 5, are we adrift in this cultural shift? I think I would argue that there is a bit of a cultural or an industrial shift that is occurring in media. We certainly are experiencing that. And the questions that I heard yesterday about should we have cameras in the courtroom, I think it's going to be a very tiny period of time in which we're even going to have the luxury of even asking that question. Because with nanotechnology, I think it's not even going to be, I think the question will be moot. So my argument today is that we are left really with coming back to working with each other as professionals where we must have trust among peers. Because when you are in the middle of cultural or industrial shifts, trust is very important for embracing not only each other in a professional partnership, but also to be able to absorb innovation. Why do we care about that? Because we have a public that will not know as much as we do, who we do have to educate. And if we don't educate them, who will? Education is everyone's job. So when I look at how we interact with the public, I'm often reminded of, and because remember, the public is us. And when we were cheek by jowl around the campfire, I looked at you 3 millennia ago and I said, you look like me, you think like me, you walk and talk like I do. You're a part of my network. I trust you. And the converse of that was also true. You don't look like me, you don't think like me, you don't walk and talk like I do. You're not a part of my network. So if these kinds of factors are not managed, or at least we don't understand them, we will go apart. If you don't look like me and you don't think like me and you have different issues going on and you have different things that are telling you to do certain things in my courtroom or in the public sphere, but I want to know you, I want to learn about this, I want to try to understand it, well, then that's an appreciation of diversity, not the little d, diversity, politically correct D, but the big D, about how we can learn and collaborate more in these hierarchical organizations, which is surely where we are headed. So my last slide is really about this relationship balance between the courts and the public and the media. It is tense, it has tension in it. I don't think that that tension is going to go away. I heard it yesterday, there's a lot of tension, and I think if the tension does go away, that's actually not a good sign. I think that this is a healthy tension, and the fact that we have conferences like this, the fact that you've been so kind to invite me here to share a few comments with you, I think bodes well for creating an understanding between the disciplines, an understanding of the way technology is changing the way that we conduct our affairs and the way that we share information, and certainly the way we have to deal with the public.